So welcome to the Buddhist Path of Awakening course. Tonight we have a very profound chapter. It's on the last stage of the Buddhist path, all in preparation for going into the death teachings starting next week. We've been surveying the regular path, and tonight we're going to be talking about the great perfection, Dzogchen, which is the most profound stage of the path altogether, and beautiful. So Michael is going to lead off. Sir.
Thank you. So yes, this chapter is titled The Great Perfection, which is one of the many names for Dzogchen or Ati tradition. Great perfection ultimately is about realizing things as they are, and that everything in its natural state is already perfect, and that it's only because of our confusion that we don't recognize that. So in this chapter, as in all the chapters in this first half of this book, Francesca Fremantle is giving us the context and information that we need in order to understand the teachings that are in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Liberation Through Hearing, which is her preferred title for that text, which is what part 2 of this book is all about. And so this is the final chapter in preparing us to approach those teachings. And she begins by just giving some context altogether about the Nyingma tradition, which is the tradition out of which the Liberation Through Hearing, or Tibetan Book of the Dead, arose. So the Nyingma tradition, as she says, derived from Padmakara or Padmasambhava, who came to Tibet in the 8th century. And she feels that a brief introduction, she provides us with, as she calls it, a brief introduction to the distinctive flavor and to some of the special features and terminology of the Nyingma tradition. So in the Nyingma tradition, there are actually 9 yanas rather than the traditional 3 that we talk about, Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. The Nyingma tradition divides the Hinayana up into 2 schools, the Shravaka or Shravakayana and the Pratyeka Buddhayana. Shravaka means hearers, and Pratyeka Buddha is solitary Buddhas or solitary realizers. And those 2 are the Hinayana tradition, what we conventionally think of Hinayana. Then the Bodhisattvayana or Mahayana tradition. And then in the Nyingma, there are actually 6 yanas in the Vajrayana. So altogether that makes 9. The Nyingma is a word that means ancient or old tradition. And this is in contrast to the other 3 major Buddhist sects in Tibet, which are considered the new, or sometimes the word Sarma, S-A-R-M-A, is used to describe, which is the Kagyu, the Sakya, and the Gelugpa. The Kagyu lineage began in the 11th century, so about 300 years later than the Nyingma tradition. Sakya also, I think, in the 11th century, and I think the Gelugpa is even a little later than that. And as she explains in her introduction, that both the old and the new traditions divide the tantras into inner and outer tantras, so that there are 3 lower or outer tantras that are present in all 4 of these sects. The difference really comes in the inner tantra. But the 3 lower tantras, which she just really provides the name, the Kriya, which is ritual action, Charya, which is conduct or way of life, and Yoga, jhana, which means union. Yoga always means union. But those are the outer tantras, which are considered preparatory to the inner tantras. They're meant to develop a foundation for inner tantra practice. The inner tantra, in the Kagyu, Sakya, and Gelugpa traditions, there's only one inner tantra. For instance, in the Kagyu, it's the Anuttara Yoga Tantra, which means Anuttara Yoga means highest yoga. And within that tradition, in the Kagyu, are such practices as Vajrayogini, Kala Chakra, and Chakra Sambhara practices. But in the Nyingma, there are three inner tantras: the Maha-yoga, which means great yoga, the Anu-yoga, which is further yoga, and the Ati-yoga, which is transcendent yoga. And most of this chapter is devoted to talking about Ati, or the great perfection, or Dzogchen, which are all referring to the same thing, the highest or final jnana in the Nyingma tradition. The Maha-yoga, as she says, is mostly concerned with creation stage practice, developing the development stage of visualization practice, where you create the visualization as a really advanced form of shamatha vipassana meditation. The Anu Yoga is more involved with completion stage practice, which involves, as we talked about briefly, I think, a couple of weeks ago, really just the letting go and just dealing very directly with energies and very directly with the subtle body and all of the things that we talked about previously. But Ati Yoga, she says, takes the practitioner beyond both. And it's interesting because the way that it does this is really an expression of utter simplicity, after all the complexity of all the other things. But the ultimate meaning of Ati is really simplicity. Ati Yoga is the special teaching that's particularly associated with Nyingma, as she says. And it's usually often known by its Tibetan name, Dzogchen, which means great perfection. And then she says that Dzogchen is arranged in three sections or three divisions: mind, space, and special instructions. And really, the rest of this chapter really is about these three: mind, space, and special instructions. True to her background as a Buddhist scholar, she says a little bit more just in terms of giving us context as where this all fits in the overall picture of Buddhism. She says that there's no Sanskrit Dzogchen literature that's yet been discovered. That to some part of this is that a lot of the Nyingma teachings were presented as terma, discovered teachings. We've talked about that before. Teachings that Padmasambhava and other teachers, but Padmasambhava or Padmakara in particular, left in various ways, sometimes hidden in physical form, sometimes as mind terma. And the idea of terma is that terma teachings are revealed when they're particularly relevant, or when the world is really ready or in need of these specific teachings. But the other thing is, as she says, is that most likely Dzogchen, she feels, developed in northwestern India, which parts of the world that would now be Pakistan and Afghanistan. This is where Padmasambhava came from. And that this was one of the regions that was first affected by Muslim conquest. Forget exactly when, 1400, maybe John would know. But that then eventually spread to more of northeastern India as well, resulting in, for instance, the destruction of many of the monasteries and Nalanda University there. So that's her feeling as to why perhaps there aren't any Sanskrit records of Dzogchen teachings. But then she moves to, what is Dzogchen? And as she says, it's a teaching of absolute directness and simplicity, going straight to the heart of the Buddha's message. Direct in that it is direct recognition of the nature of mind, the true nature of mind, the true nature of our being, and simplicity in that what's said is that the fundamental nature of mind, there's nothing that needs to be added and nothing that needs to be taken away. That mind is never affected in any way by any overlay of adventitious confusion, distraction. The nature of awareness, the fundamental nature of our mind in its most simple nature is always just what it is. And that this goes straight to the heart of the Buddha's message. It's the result of the most subtle and profound insight into the ultimate nature of reality and the mind. She goes on to say that when we follow the Buddha's path, there are methods that bring about certain experiences, but once these are assimilated, they're not the final stage, and we have to let go. She points out that becoming attached to the accomplishment of any stage is like dwelling in a God realm. This is what Trungpa Rinpoche warned about in terms of spiritual materialism. That if we haven't completely let go of ego, if we haven't completely let go of fixed mind, then there's a danger in clinging to the results of practice. So, for instance, one of the first things that we're taught to do is to practice shamatha meditation, to quiet the mind, to allow the mind to settle, to deal with the fact that most of the time as ordinary beings, we follow one thought after another and are in a state of distraction, confusion, and ignorance. And that through shamatha practice, we're able to settle the mind, allow the mind to calm down. The danger is that the peaceful quality of shamatha can become a trap. It's said that shamatha for most of us is necessary, but it's not sufficient for enlightenment, that we need to practice vipassana as well, clear seeing, insight meditation, whatever we want to call that. So if we were to stay with just the peaceful quality of shamatha, we'd be stuck. It would be like a God realm existence. We would not have truly realized the fundamental true nature of mind. Which is why great teachers in the past, such as Milarepa, make statements such as not being attached to the pool of shamatha, let the flower of vipassana bloom. And this goes through each stage of the path. It's important to develop compassion. It's important to work with the paramitas. But at each point, and each one of these things is wonderful and powerful in itself, but at each point there's something we also need to let go of. There's something we need to go further with in order to reach full, complete enlightenment. She says that Dzogchen relies on the ever-present reality of Buddha nature. I highlighted certain words because I think they're important to keep in mind. One is, and this here, it's ever-present. The idea is that we're Buddha nature, we're never really cut off from Buddha nature. That what happens is we may fail to recognize it. We may fail to recognize our Buddha nature. We may fail to be able to rest in our Buddha nature, but it's always available to us. It's always ever present. And that's the reality of Buddha nature. And that in its fullest expression, we're able to let go of reference points and fixation, that it roots out any idea that there's any difference between samsara and nirvana, confusion and wisdom, that it cuts through all reference points, destroying the duality of experience and experiencer. And this is, and as she says, this is the principle expressed by the wild and ferocious energy of the wrathful deities that we encountered in the Bardo experience. This complete letting go, complete openness, complete freedom from any sense of reference point. And that what makes the wrathful deities seem wild and ferocious is when we see them from the point of view of ego, because from the point of view of ego, this is terrifying. This is the ego looks for comfort and security and solidity. And so this complete experience of rooting out any idea that there's a difference between confusion and wisdom, samsara and nirvana, cut through all reference points from the point of view of ego, is terrifying. She says that the technique in Dzogchen is direct mind-to-mind transmission between guru and disciple, pointing out or identifying the true nature of mind. So the idea here is that the guru's mind and the true nature of our mind are one and the same thing, that there is, that in essence, our mind and the guru's mind is the same. And that the guru, by pointing this out, through transmission, you could say, almost creates like a resonance that helps us realize this, or allow us to begin to wake up to this reality. And she says this mind remains the same no matter what experiences come and go within it. And I think sometimes we see this in a very simple way in meditation practice. We see thoughts come and go. We see emotions come and go. We see different perceptions come and go. And if we're really settled in our fundamental awareness, we realize that awareness itself doesn't change. What we might be aware of, there's a constant flow, a constant flux. But the nature of awareness itself, basic openness, basic knowing quality of mind, that doesn't change. It's always the same. And that's for some reason, and for that reason, sometimes the true nature of mind is sometimes called the abiding nature, the abiding essence of mind, because it's what fundamentally is always there. And from the point of view of Dzogchen, it's never affected, never stained or altered in any way by anything we experience. And again, that in realizing this, we realize that nothing needs to be added and nothing taken away. And then when we have a deep conviction in this and a deep identification with that, we begin to realize that that's true. So, as she says, if one could rest in that state, the true nature of mind, full awareness, there's no need for any other method. And this is why you have books in the Nyingma tradition, such as Buddhahood without meditation, because meditation, when practiced with any sense of goal or effort, even though in the beginning it might be necessary, and shamatha meditation, for instance, is necessary to allow the mind to settle, to begin to see what might be there, as opposed to going from confused thought to confused thought. At some point, we need to let go of effort altogether. At some point, we need to just allow ourselves to simply be. So anyway, she says, if we could rest in that state without distraction, there's no need for any other method. But as she says, we also need more than a glimpse of mind essence, which is where the practices of the other two inner yogas, Mahayoga and Ana Yoga, come in. And with this, she begins talking about the three divisions that she mentioned before as the three divisions of the Dzogchen tradition: mind, space, and special instructions, and begins by talking about mind, and points out that there are a lot of different words for mind that cover all different possible states of mind, everything from subconscious gossip to logical thought, reason, emotions, sense perceptions, right up to the awakened state. But the point is, the awakened state is the fundamental primordial nature of mind, which is also called mind itself, which is also a term in the Mahamudra tradition as well, mind itself, to separate this fundamental abiding nature, essence of mind from all the other different functions and appearances that we take to be mind, that we experience perhaps as ungraspable now. But as she says, in reality, for all of this, there's only one mind, whether it's deluded or awakened. And she says that it's said that the only difference between Buddhas and ordinary beings is that ordinary beings don't realize they're Buddhas. So when we think of ourselves as ordinary, that means we're in some state of confusion. We're in some state of not recognizing our true nature. A significant term in Dzogchen is awareness, or Rigpa, which I think many of us are familiar with. And the Rigpa is the ultimate nature of mind. As she says, it's a synonym for the awakened state. She describes this as a knowing state of being, not knowing in the sense of facts and information, but knowing in the sense of being fully awake to the present moment and knowing things as they are. A direct and personal experience that gives one complete certainty and confidence. She describes it in its nature as unobscured, omniscient, and all-pervading, that nothing can limit it. She says it's mind's primordial, intrinsic capacity for recognition, its capacity for knowing the real nature of things before ignorance and confusion ever arise. It's beyond thought, it's free from thought processes, free from the distinction between mind and its objects. Rigpa, she says, has been translated in different ways as insight, which she says Trungpa Rinpoche used sometimes, and the Tibetan Book of the Dead sometimes as intelligence or mind. But she says now it seems like awareness is the most widely adopted term translation for Rigpa. And she feels that this is best to convey the sense of awakened presence as well as knowing. She begins then talking about the word vidya, or wisdom, from the Sanskrit root to see, which she says covers all fields of knowledge, arts and sciences, up to mantras. And she describes mantra as knowledge that becomes word, knowledge that's power, a magic spell. That vidya as mantra is a statement of truth that has the power to make itself true, or rather to reveal the unrecognized true state of things that's always present. So as an example of that, I think many people here have recited at one time or another the Heart Sutra, which is a sutra on prajna paramita and emptiness. And if we think about form is emptiness, emptiness is form. But then it gets to a part where, having let go of all the different things that we might hold on to, form, feeling, perception, and so on, all of the senses, sense objects, and so on and so forth, all of the things we might let go of, it begins talking about mantra. And finally, we're presented with the Prajnaparamita mantra, Gate Gate, Pargate, Parasamgate, Bodhiswaha. Gate Gate, gone gone, Paragate, gone beyond, Parasamgate, completely gone beyond, complete letting go. And then what's left? Bodhi, awake. And this is again in a Mahayana way talking about much the same thing, that when we're able to let go, we're able to let go of confusion, reference point, that we're left with just the true nature of mind, the awake nature of mind. So in that way, mantra is a statement of truth that has the power to make itself true, or rather, to reveal the unrecognized true state of things that's always present. So with this, in the Vajrayana, confusion is transmuted into wisdom. And at the highest level, which is the Ati level, we come to the realization that beings have always been awakened, so that no transformation is necessary at all. That the magical knowledge or awareness is simply the naked, direct seeing of what is. In Liberation Through Hearing, she says the ultimate nature of mind is revealed as the state of luminosity, which the text describes as inseparable emptiness and clarity. And then she quotes the Buddha as saying that mind is luminous but obscured by defilements that are not intrinsic to it. It's like covered over somewhat, like gold that has mud on it. It can be cleared off. It doesn't affect the gold at all. It's just temporarily obscured. She says that the Mahayana Sutras emphasize emptiness alone as the highest possible description of reality, while Tantras speak more frequently of luminosity as the essence of mind in all phenomena. So with luminosity, we're talking about the expression of Rigpa, you could say. She defines emptiness as the mind's aspect of insubstantiality, non-self, spaciousness, and openness like the boundless sky. And that the clarity is mind's power to illuminate its objects, which are really nothing but the display of its own luminous nature. So here again, talking about the knowing quality of Rigpa, the knowing quality of mind. And again, knowing just in the simple thing of knowing directly what experience is. In Dzogchen, she emphasizes again the non-dual nature of this knowing, that there's no distinction between subject and object, that emptiness is the essence of luminosity, while clarity is its nature or expression. And again, in relation to the Book of the Dead, or Liberation Through Hearing, luminosity experience in meditation is called path luminosity or child luminosity. Well, the true luminosity of our awakened nature is called basic or mother luminosity. And it's this luminosity that dawns at the moment of death. And if recognized, mother and child meet and become one. So in other words, with path luminosity, we familiarize ourselves with the luminous, basic, true essence of mind. And then when we fully experience that at the moment of death, we just are able to merge with that. So all of that will be in part 2, of course. Anyway, she says, again, speaking as a translator, talks about luminosity is sometimes translated as clear light, which she says is a term that Trungpa Rinpoche didn't like, but sometimes used. Felt there was too much of a light at the end of the tunnel. So sort of, I think, maybe looking at something as being more external, as opposed to realizing it's the true nature of mind, or too much of an expression of ordinary visual light, where what's meant, as she says, is a more subtle concept conveyed by luminosity, But she says in the Book of the Dead, Liberation Through Hearing, there does distinguish sometimes between clarity and luminosity. So part of her translation in part 2 will involve clear light. In any case, luminosity is the ever-present background out of which the visions of the peaceful and wrathful deities appear. They're the heart of experience of the bardo. As Trungpa Rinpoche says, luminosity comes up as subtle gaps of all kinds in all realms, and can be frightening as it offers nothing to grasp onto or hang on to. Trungpa Rinpoche, she quotes Trungpa Rinpoche as saying, "Clear light is the sense of desolation of complete open space. If we can let go and merge with it, so there is no longer any sense of perceiver and perceived, then, quote, when clear light ceases to become experience, then that itself is space." So with that, we move from the mind division of Dzogchen to the space, which is another basic concept. But here it's not ordinary space. It's a sense of, it's space, but refers to space of mind. Trungpa Rinpoche said, she quotes Trungpa Rinpoche as saying this could be the Buddhist version of God. I think it's something like what we've come to understand in other places, the experience of Dharmakaya, nothing whatever, yet everything arises from it. And Trungpa Rinpoche apparently said that the Book of the Dead could be called a book of space. So the important thing is space is not different from mind, but it does provide a different perspective. It's the environment of mind, inseparable from mind's awareness. Instead of, she says, instead of talking in terms of a universal or cosmic mind, which could be vaguely theistic, there is vast, limitless, open space. This is the idea of space in this level, which can't be personified or deified in any way. It's simply there, the primary basis of everything. And because it's so open and endless, it's impossible to dwell in it or become fixated on it. And with this vast sense of space, just limitless space, there's an absolute absence of conceptual thought, fabrication, or effort. This is the particular quality of Ati Yoga. Just Ati means extreme, transcendent, or beyond. However far we go, we can never arrive at the end of space. It's always beyond. She says when Trungpa Rinpoche talked about space, he used different words and different aspects. One was akasha, which is the fifth element, which also means sky. Its space as element is the most subtle, imperceptible, and it contains and supports all the other elements of earth, air, fire, and water. The early Buddhist schools classified space as completely pure, unconditional dharma, equal with nirvana, because it transcends all the material elements, has no dimensions, is entirely outside our usual concepts of space and time. So, and she quotes the Guhya Samaja Tantra, where Buddha Vajrasattva teaches all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. All phenomena are like a dream, yet they appear to be real through Vajra illusion, and they exist in Vajra space. Everything exists in space, but since space itself does not exist in any of the three worlds, nothing has ever really arisen. So in this way, mind is like space. Mind is vast. Mind is limitless. We bind mind through concepts, just as we try to define space through concepts. But those are all relative truths. They're true only relative to the defining concepts we use. I think we've talked about this before. I could say that I'm in the space of this room, but it's defined by four walls, a floor, and a ceiling. But space doesn't stop there. And even with that, the walls, ceiling themselves are in space themselves. There's space there. It may not be obvious to us, but if the walls were not there, that space, or the walls were, is there. So space is limited, is limitless, ungraspable. And in the same way, it said that mind is like space. So with this, the Guhya Samaja Tantra, she quotes from the Guhya Samaja Vajra Tantra as, then all the Buddhists asked Vajrasattva, Blessed One, where do all the enlightened phenomena exist and where are they born? He answered, they exist in your body, speech, and mind, and they are born from your body, speech, and mind. They asked, where does mind exist? He answered, in space. They asked, where does space exist? He answered, nowhere. At that, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas were filled with wonder and amazement. Contemplating their own mind, the dwelling of the ultimate nature of reality, they remained silent. So again, I think this goes back to a complete letting go of all reference points, letting go of fixation, letting go of any binding of the mind through habitual patterns, to just complete openness, clarity, and luminosity. Another word for space is dhatu, which conveys the idea, which she says combines the idea of the vast expanse of emptiness, openness, and insubstantiality. And it's often combined with other words. So the two that I think we're most familiar with are Vajra Dhatu, which Vajra means indestructible. So it's indestructible space, where nothing can be destroyed because of its essential emptiness. Space is never destroyed, just as mind is never affected or in its fundamental sense by anything that happens, Vajra mind. Or Dharma Dhatu, that which contains all dharmas, the realm of all phenomena, all-encompassing space. But this can also refer to the mind, she says, which is naturally empty like space, yet is the source of all experience. And finally, Tibetan word long, vast open space, but here it's the space experienced within, free from duality of subject and object, the living space of one's being. And she says this can mean a wave, which has the sense of both a flowing current and billowing vastness, and it can mean the center or being in the midst of something. And describes this or relates this to imagery in Tibetan painting where deities and Buddhas have auras of light around them, and which she describes as ceaseless waves of compassionate energy, or what Trungpa Rinpoche called radiation without a radiator. That this vibrant space in these Tibetan paintings is an image of lung with the deity surrounded by a lung of 5 colors. Lung itself has no center or boundary. And this is also true of space, that again, to say that there's a center of space is to work with reference points, to work with, to define something as in relative terms, but that ultimately or in absolute truth doesn't exist. So lung has no center or boundary, that when we are completely open, we realize we're in the midst of space, and we are space itself, that we're not separate from space. We exist in space. It's so that there's a limitless expanse of openness, ceaselessly, as she says, ceaselessly giving birth to the dynamic flow of appearances. And she quotes Trungpa Rinpoche in his commentary on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, that space contains birth and death. Space creates the environment in which to behave, breathe, and act. It's the fundamental environment which provides the inspiration for the Book of the Dead. So space is emptiness and luminosity, luminous emptiness, which is again the title of this entire book. Because it's empty, nothing exists, yet because it's luminous, everything arises from it. She quotes Trungpa Rinpoche that the Dharmakaya arises unnecessarily out of infinite space. There's nothing forced or conditioned by it, it's just there. Here there is neither samsara, nirvana, neither self nor other. And this state is known as primordial purity, the great perfection, because it's not stained or obscured by thought or confusion. It's the original pure nature of all existence. So, vast, limitless space. And with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you, Michael. Let's take a moment and just bring our minds here into the present moment. If you take a good posture, that helps. And bring your mind into this space, here and now. The space is open, makes no demands, and yet it's full of phenomena, colors, shapes, forms, sounds, different phenomena, all rising and passing away in this moment. And we rest here in this open space of awareness with all these forms and colors and shapes arising and passing away. This is the very nature of our being. The fact that nothing endures, everything is a constant presentation and change, like these words, like this gesture, like whatever you're looking at, as it changes because your attention shifts. And yet, within that openness, that constant change, there is the communication of the colors, the sounds. Perhaps you have the smell of dinner in your house. Whatever it may be, the six knowables, these are what are referred to as luminosity. These six knowables, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, bodily sensations, and mental events. The six things that we can experience arise and pass away in space. And we rest here right now, in space, taking no particular position, and just witnessing, seeing whatever happens to arise and present itself and pass away. This is the union of space, which is another word for shunyata, emptiness. Nothing having any ongoing true existence, but in constant change. And the fact that this allows the expression of qualities of all kinds, these six basic qualities, which are the luminosity. Space and luminosity are the fundamental two aspects of being, our being. And when we come back from dreams about me and my world, and we come back to this simple awareness here and now, we're coming back to space and what fills it and passes through it all the time. These qualities, these six fundamental qualities. This is the union of space and luminosity. It is a set of concepts, these two concepts, defining reality. This is the state of Samantabhadra, he says, the primordial Buddha of the Nyingma tradition, whose name means universal goodness, absolute goodness, before the distinction between good and evil ever existed. He is wakefulness. Here we are in the present. That has never needed to become awakened because it has never fallen asleep. It's always this, whatever this may be. Sometimes this may be a dream. Sometimes this is the awakened state of being here in this room. Samantabhadra never departs from non-dual awareness. That's this. We're all doing it right now. Non-dual awareness. Your mind may go off into some dream or something, and then it's still non-dual awareness. It's still this awareness here and now of something. Vajrasattva is inseparable from the feminine principle, Samantabhadri. She is the space and emptiness that gives birth to all apparent existence. Because he is one with her, he never departs from this source. This is the reality of who and what we are, and this is what this chapter, this whole teaching is fundamentally about. This is the principle of all the female deities. This is their primary meaning, although they may also express other aspects at the same time. The Tibetan for Dakini, Dakini means feminine energy, the embodied feminine principle, is Kandroma. Dakini's Sanskrit, Kandroma is Tibetan. And that means she who moves through space. That's what Kandroma means. This is the space. Phenomena is constantly moving through it. In the mandala of the five families, the central Devi is Akasha Datvishvari, the queen of space. In the primordial wakefulness that is Samantabhadra, this right now, we're sitting in the midst of him. Whatever appears is seen as the dance of energy and space, the play of the mind. This is the fundamental description of reality, the play of energy. This, words, movement, colors, and space, what accommodates everything and allows everything to disappear. Dharmakaya manifests as Sambhogakaya within this inconceivable vast expanse. Sambhogakaya means that the phenomena that arises in space communicates to us what it is. Communicates black, communicates pink, communicates loud, communicates soft, communicates sweet, sour, all of these things. That is the Sambhogakaya, the second body of the Buddha. The first is the Dharmakaya, the space in which everything is changing. The second body is the Sambhogakaya. And the third body is the Nirmanakaya, which means that everything that appears in space takes a form, has a presence, a being in our lives. It's Lodro sitting there. It's me sitting here. It's this gesture of the hand, Nirmanakaya, constantly coming present. So within this inconceivable vast expanse that we're sitting in the middle of, in which we take for granted so much every day, the five lights radiate and transform into magical displays. The five lights are the five colors that we've already discussed. The five dakinis of the elements dance, each with their own special quality. There's the blue, green, red, white, and yellow dakinis, and they all dance, communicating the different qualities of the phenomenal world. The blue dakini is space. The green is the energy that flies through space, enlivening every particle. The red dakini is fierce passion, radiating heat and light in all directions. The white dakini flows with continual change and grace. And the yellow dakini dances majestically, forming the solid earth. Everything solid, towering mountains. The five lights of knowledge pervade the whole of existence, these five lights. Nothing lies outside them. The ultimate reality of the Dharmadhatu, this space of reality, is reflected in the clear mirror. Transcendent equalness, because all of these things are equal, pervades the unique qualities of each separate thing. Love spontaneously arises, and enlightened action is automatically accomplished in this space. It's the very nature of it. It's happening all the time. It's just that we become distracted into dreams of self and other, of unhappiness and happiness, of wishing things were one way rather than another. But meanwhile, all of this is happening. Trungpa Rinpoche describes this as solidifying space. What's what ignorance does? Ignorance, when we lapse into doubt, self-doubt, a feeling of unhappiness, wishing things were otherwise. This is called ignorance. Ignorance means not seeing. Not seeing what? Not seeing this incredible motility and openness of space and phenomena. He describes this ignorance, this avidya, not seeing, as solidifying space. The splintered energy speeds up. It seems to become solid and substantial, like the effect of a motion picture created by a spinning reel of film. This is the action of ignorance, of stupidity, of missing the boat. If the energy returns to its source, the openness of space, then it is the primordial Buddha. But if it continues into confusion, it becomes confused, sentient beings. The whole process of samsara then develops by means of, and we've studied this, the 5 skandhas and the 12 links of dependent origination, 12 links of the wheel of life. And this is the description of how we lapse into ignorance, into stupidity, missing this luminous, constantly changing, open space. In that case, the absence of ego, which is the empty aspect of space, becomes frozen into a sense of self, while the luminous aspect that gives rise to appearances is mistakenly perceived as other. So when we lapse into ego, into ignorance, into avidya, not seeing, we solidify this space, and the energies of it, this pink, this sound, becomes other, and we have I and other, ego. He writes, it is as though awareness had fallen asleep and woken up to a completely different world of duality. So now it believes this is how it has always been. There's no reason why all this should happen. It's not regarded as evil or shameful, like some kind of original sin. It's just simply how things are, how they happen. And this isn't something that happened a long time ago. Only once. The development of ego out of awareness is taking place every moment, every time we solidify it. After all, it is not really possible to solidify space. It has to be done over and over again. The whole elaborate illusion is continuously being created and dissolving away again because it's not real. It's like a false statement that you have to make over and over again. And once the statement is over, it's said, it's done, we are back here in this open dimension of space with everything from the phenomenal world changing in it. This is the true description of reality. The fact that nothing has any ongoing true existence, everything is a constant change. And that in that constant change, there is the communication of the qualities, the 6 knowables: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental. This is the luminosity that arises and constantly changing in space. This is the description of reality that we're being given. Now we lapse into dreams. We say, oh, I don't really understand this. Oh, I'm hoping someday I get enlightened. Oh, I don't even know if this is worthwhile, what I'm paying for. Meanwhile, we're living it. This open dimension of space with qualities. He says, or she says, Francesca, as liberation through hearing reminds us, Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri, these are the all good, male and female. Samantabhadra is male, Samantabhadri is female. They're in interaction, they're constantly fucking, making love, interpenetrating, coming apart. It never stops. And they are the essence of our own mind. The discovery of space is the whole purpose of meditation. from the first stages of calming the restless mind to the final attainment of Dzogchen, the great perfection. This is the discovery of space, which allows the constant motion of phenomenal world, of luminosity, of Ursel, it's called in Tibetan, this luminous world. So these are the two fundamental principles of reality. We should never let go of this: space and phenomena, the luminous quality of phenomena expressing itself. This is what we come back to in our meditation again and again. What we're waking up to, what we're enjoying. This is how you enjoy a good dinner. This is how you enjoy making love to your partner. This is how you enjoy the beautiful quality of a day with sunshine and the wind blowing. It's this openness of space filled with the changing phenomena, which is in constant change. Life within samsara, confusion, I and other, the freezing of space and phenomena, consists of the 6 realms and the 3 dhatus. 6 realms, we know what they are, right? Hell realm, hungry ghost, animal, human, jealous god, and God realm, the 6 realms. And the 3 dhatus are the realm of desire, in which those 6 realms that I just mentioned, they're called the loka, they live. The realm of pure form, which is a state of concentration, and there are 4 basic aspects to that or more. And then the formless realm, which is a state of even purer concentration. All of these are expressions of ego, of I and other, of trying to create something, to keep this illusion of frozen space and I and other alive. Whatever happens takes place within the environment of space, without which nothing could arise. Space is the non-existence of everything. So whenever there is a sense of grasping and fixation, there is also the possibility of letting go. This is what we do. And really, let's take just a good posture again. Everybody, if you could. I'm doing it, it's slightly artificial to take a good posture, but it helps. And you bring your mind right here into this. This is it. This is Dzogchen. This is the perfection of space and phenomena. This is the last and ultimate reality, here. And if we sit here and we think, oh, but there's got to be something more, I'm not qualified to experience reality, let it go. This is it. This is what we're being taught in this chapter. To come back again and again to this, and to begin to celebrate and trust in this open space of phenomena. This is the world of the real. And the path, the Dzogchen path, the path of great perfection, is the path of coming back again and again to this. We go off in a dream. What's for lunch? I don't like that person. I do like this other person. And then we come back and here we are, right now. It's always here for us. What an incredible gift we're being given. This is the freedom from confusion, the freedom from wishing things were otherwise. What a chain that is, to constantly wish that things were otherwise. And we just come back again and again to this, here and now. This is the great perfection. This is the bodhicitta. We are fundamentally enlightened, all of us. We are awake in our true nature, all of us. The fact that we think we're not, that's the big mistake. And that's what leads us again and again into confusion and suffering. So we just come back to this very simple awareness here and now, the room that we're in, the voice you're listening to. This is the practice of Dzogchen. This is the practice of the great perfection. This is the great perfection. Isn't that amazing? We thought it was going to be something else. We thought we had to create all kinds of things, like visions of Vajrayogini and whatever, and that then we would someday get enlightened and we would discover the truth. It's here all the time. It's waiting for us. It isn't even waiting for us. It's just here. That's personifying it too much. I'm going to stop here for a second at least. Let's see, what time is it? 6:31. We still have some more time. But I want to open it up to some questions or comments or complaints. We're being given an enormous gift here. Anybody?
Well, I hate to ask what sounds like a stupid question, but
Good, good. Stupid questions are great.
when I die and I lose this consciousness, what happens to this space? It just goes on without me.
Who knows? If you don't have consciousness, you're not going to know. But actually what happens is when you die, you still have consciousness. That's what they say. It's just that it changes. The contents, the luminosity changes. But the consciousness itself goes on.
So the whole point of this teaching is about now, not later.
Exactly.
So asking the question of what happens at death is completely beside the point. It's not even part of the discussion.
Right.
Then why are we so obsessed with it?
Why are we so what?
Obsessed with it, or
Obsessed
me,
with,
with the loss of this consciousness.
who knows? I mean, we have all kinds of obsessions, and then they come and they go. But what we're being taught is how to come back to the real, which is an effortless proposition. When there's effort, then you're missing it. You're lost in some kind of a dream, a journey. And then we let it go, and we come back, and here we are. It's already here. This is bodhicitta, awakened mind. This is Tathagata Garbha, the essence of the Buddhas, Tathagatas, those who have gone beyond. This is reality. It's the ultimate reality. And if we think that we're going to improve on it, then
Thank you.
that's an endless proposition. But when we come back to this world here and now, we have amazing opportunities to do good, to be involved with other people, to be creative, to create beauty, love, real compassion, real communication with each other. What a gift we've been given. What an opportunity. This is Dzogchen, the great perfection. What an irony. We thought it was going to be something like, billboards on Broadway in New York. It's this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It was great. Working with this is great. All of you, all of us. None of us is superior. We all have this tremendous opportunity to be communicative with each other within the space of awareness. To be friends, to be lovers, to be whatever. This is Dzogchen. Thank you, Francesca. Let me see, I've sort of lost where I was with her. But, so we got life within the three realms, within samsara, consisting of the 6 realms. All of these are mistakes. All of these have to do with the mental creation of I and other and some kind of idea that we can make things better, which is baloney. Whatever happens takes place within the environment of space, without which nothing could arise. Space is what allows everything to arise. It's the non-existence of everything that we think exists. So whenever there is a sense of grasping and fixation, there is also the possibility of letting go, of acknowledgement, of giving, of acknowledging that the reality of this. Whenever there is a sense of being trapped, there is also the possibility of openness and freedom. This relaxation is not a state of passivity and inaction, but of clear, precise awareness in which we are utterly, choicelessly, inevitably responsive to whatever presents itself. It's free from the interference of the confused mind, which wants to freeze things and say, this is better than that. Energy arising from that spaciousness is unobstructed, without the preconceptions and limitations that the mind imposes. Action becomes spontaneous, free from hesitation and doubt. And then I've got this in red because it's so important and highlighted in yellow. It's red and yellow. Trungpa Rinpoche used to say, just do it. He used to shout that at us. I think this is a man who lived in this space, really. Just do it. This attitude of simply relaxing and resting in the space of one's basic nature is particularly strong in Dzogchen. Trungpa Rinpoche's whole approach to Dharma was based on it, and boy was it ever. Whatever kind of practice he was teaching, it was always pervaded by the flavor of Dzogchen, Ati, as he usually called it. He just lived in this. It was everything he did. Everything. I remember him sitting in a chair with a glass of scotch, and he put the glass of scotch on the arm of the chair, and then, in a seeming accident, who knows, knocked it over, and it fell on the ground. And I was sitting there pretty close, and you could. And I think the first time that ever happened to me, I didn't realize that he drank, and I smelled the smell of scotch. And he just looked at us all, and he was so pleased, and we were so stunned. How did he do that? He made a mistake. He knocked his glass off the arm of the chair. And he just laughed at us, thinking that he had to be perfect. He just lived in this space of awareness. This is no longer a path of transformation. We're not transforming ourselves into Buddhas. It's spontaneous self-liberation. We're liberating ourselves from the preconceptions that we have about how we have to be perfect or something. It's spontaneous self-liberation resulting from direct recognition of reality. That this is what's real. That there are no rules. There is nobody watching to be critical if you knock the glass off your arm of your chair or whatever you may do. They're just not there. That's imaginary. I don't think I'm going to finish this tonight. I think we're going to go on. Where are we? We're at 6:40. We'll see how get a little further. But we're probably going to have to This is a long chapter. I'll just say this too before we get too far into it. There are two practices connected with Dzogchen, great perfection. Two practices. One is called Trekchit in Tibetan, and it means cutting through confusion to awakening. And that's all that we've been talking about so far. Cutting through confusion, feeling that things have to be one way or another, to awakening to this present state. That's the first major practice of Dzogchen. Waking up, cutting through any kind of belief that you have to be perfect in some way. And that is the practice that is most available to us. There is a second practice. They're paired, Trekchit and Tugal, it's called, like T-H-O with an umlaut, G-A-L, Tugal. Tugal is translated variously and badly. There's really no good translation for it. Usually it's translated as something like surpassing or crossing over. But what it has to do with is this, roughly, and I'll say very roughly, that having come back to the present moment with Trekchit, cutting through what we've been talking about this whole time, what I've been talking about, and what I'm sure you're thinking about, coming back to this, then the world emerges very, very, very vividly. That's Tugal. Tugal is this vivid emergence of the world, so vivid that when you can practice Tugal, it takes place in 4 stages. And you'll see or you'll read about great teachers like Padmasambhava or Vimalamitra, Sri Singha, and others achieving the 4 stages. These 4 stages, the first stage is that you might look at the sun, or you look slightly away from the sun so you don't burn your eyes. And you see, you know how you see, what are they called, those little things in your eyes? Somebody help me here. When you see them, they sort of swim across your eyeballs.
Floaters?
Huh? Floaters. Floaters. When you begin to practice Tugal, you see the floaters, but you also begin to see what are called bindus. Bindus are energy centers. And you don't, nor ordinary people do not see the bindus. They require tremendous awareness of coming into the present moment. You'll still see the floaters, and you ignore them, because the bindus are what are important. And in the first stage, you just begin to see the bindus. And you begin to notice that they're multicolored. They have, red, blue, green, yellow, white. And the reason is, those little bindus are mandalas, tiny little mandalas, dots. And in the stages, they grow and grow in the 4 stages of Tugal. And in the last stage of Tugal, you see the world of the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities that is contained within these bindus that have grown enormously. And you see this world of peaceful and wrathful deities. You can see there's a wrathful deity on the wall behind me over here. He's really nasty looking. Because what these represent is wisdom that's so extreme that it cuts through our hesitations, our self-doubt, our confusion. It destroys them. It's the wrathful aspect of wisdom. Actually, these are even easier to look at than the peaceful Buddhas. The 100, remember there, it said 100 peaceful and wrathful deities. I forget how many is which. I think there are 46 wrathful and 54 peaceful deities. And the peaceful deities are even harder to see, harder to look at with your eyes when you begin to see them in these bindus, because they are so bright. They're hard to look at. And this is the last stage of the great perfection, is to see these 100 peaceful and wrathful deities through this practice called Tugel. It's not easy. You're entering the world, the sacred world. These deities are here now, right now, but we just can't see them because we're so absorbed in our ordinary states of mind. And then we can see them, but after a while, they don't matter anymore because we're just dealing with whatever is presenting itself to us with compassion, with accuracy, with wisdom. And the reason I'm mentioning this all together, Francesca is not a Dzogchen practitioner. She has studied it, and she's done Trekchit, cutting through. She doesn't understand Tugel. And it comes across in this writing. She really doesn't know about it. And the reason that I can say that is that 20 years ago, I started studying with a man named Khenpo Namdrol, who is a great Nyingma and so Dzogchen teacher. And I went and did a retreat with him in Nepal, in which I tried to do Tugel and got a lot of guidance from him. So I understand what Tugel is. That doesn't mean I can do it, or at least do it very much. Tugel takes a lot of work, a lot of time, at least for me, would. Tugel, you can do Trekchit, and these two go together, and you can achieve complete enlightenment just with cutting through with Trekchit. What we're talking about here, and Francesca gets that beautifully. She does not understand Tugel, and that's what I'm telling you that so that when you read this, you are prepared. She doesn't, Tugel is a magical practice. I mean, you're seeing, the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities live in front of you, supposedly. Wow. Yeah. She writes here, the final teachings of Dzogchen are found in the instructions section of Ati Yoga. Now we're talking about what I've just talked about. They consist of the two stages called cutting through, Trekchit, and surpassing. That's the way she translates Tugel. These two stages are the basis of the instructions given in Liberation Through Hearing. Liberation Through Hearing, remember, that's the Book of the Dead. That's the real title of the Book of the Dead. W.Y. Evans Wentz borrowed the title, the Book of the Dead, from the Egyptian canon because he thought it would help his translations sell. And it's stuck. But Liberation Through Hearing is the real title. Bardo Tudal. Bardo means the space, the interval. Tudal, tu is to hear, and dal is the word for liberation. So it's liberation through hearing in the space after death, waking up. These instructions transcend the stages of creation and completion by dissolving every last subtle trace of clinging to self or conceptual thought, even the concept of enlightenment. It just falls away. It's irrelevant. This is no longer a path of transformation, but of spontaneous self-liberation resulting from direct recognition of reality. She is so good on this. And we can do it, each one of us, realizing that there is nothing more to gain than this, what we're sitting in the midst of right now. And we just come back to it with a clear, open mind, devoid of preconception. I can see some of you really clicking to this. And others maybe tuning out. Maybe I'm saying it over and over again too much. It's just that it's here now. That's what's so amazing. And it's available to all of us, this state of doubtlessness, clarity, acknowledging the real world. I think we ought to stop here. With this quote, this is no longer a path of transformation, but of spontaneous self-liberation, resulting from direct recognition of reality, she writes. So we can have some little discussion here, and we'll have more discussion tomorrow. And then we'll finish this chapter. Michael and I will figure out how to do it next week. It's an extraordinarily profound chapter. And then we will go into the actual teachings on death. And we'll start with a description of what happens to each one of us as we die. The falling away of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, tactile sensations, thoughts, mental events, it all falls away. And it's described in detail in the Bardo Turdal. It's actually the first part of the Bardo Turdal, of the Book of Liberation through Death. So, questions, complaints? We're being given the last and most ultimate teachings now. We all are. Well, hands, so here we go. Trip.
Yeah, so a couple things going through my mind. I feel there's a little bit of, not a little bit, there's a lot of the teaching for me feels complex. You know, a tangled web of complexity is what occurred to me as I got into this chapter, balanced against the simplicity of what you're pointing out. And I just read In Love with the World by Mingyur Rinpoche, which really helped me feel a little more secure in my my challenge with, you know, diving into more complex practices on my own versus being out in the world and dealing and being in the world as it is, you know, as opposed to shut away and spending hours a day, you know, in some of the practices that are described, you know, that I'm aware of, versus being out and just doing it. And so it's more of a commentary, a recommendation for the book, but also how does one reconcile the simplicity of what this is all about with the complexity of the teachings? Reconcile those.
I'll take a shot at that, and then Michael, maybe you've got something to say. I think it depends on happenstance, on who you happen to connect with, and what makes sense to you. The path that you take and choose has a lot to do with the human being that you connect to and what they're teaching and how they're expressing it, as well as your resonance with those teachings. And if it makes sense to you and motivates you, tread the path. There are basically, in Tibetan Buddhism, two fundamental approaches. One is the gradual path of creation and completion. And in that path, you will do practices that open up your mind to more and more reality until finally you rest in reality. But there are these two phases of doing the practices that open you up. So for instance, in the Kagyu path, you might be meditating on Vajrayogini. This is a form practice. And it will open you up to reality. And eventually, the practice merges and you begin to rest in the real. The Dzogchen practice skips that. It skips those creation stages. They're called creation and completion. Creation is you do the visualization, you do the practice, and you complete it by resting in reality. Creation and completion. Dzogchen has no creation stage. It's just pure completion. Always.
What do you mean by that?
It's resting in reality, all from beginning to end. You're learning how to do that, not by creating a practice that's going to lead you there, but by just doing it.
So being out in the world, essentially, like I'm describing. So, you know, being a householder, I think is the term, right? And being day to day, you know, out in the world. Is that the Dzogchen?
The Dzogchen can be anything. It could be anywhere, anything. It could be being an executive on Wall Street. It could be being a householder in Oshkosh. You know, it could be anything.
But it's attainable without creation and completion process.
Yes. And when you read Dzogchen teachings coming from a Dzogchen teacher, they might be very critical of instructions to do creation and completion practices, like visualization of Vajrayogini or Chakrasamvara or whatever it might be, and dissolving that into awareness. And you just have to choose what makes sense to you and also who connects to you. So what happened, for instance, for me was I was doing creation and completion practices that I had received. You know, Trungpa Rinpoche taught them, but he also taught Dzogchen. But then he died, and I met this fellow, Khenpo Namdrol. And eventually, Khenpo Namdrol went beyond any kind of creation and completion and began to teach nothing but Dzogchen. And that's what he's been doing for about the last 10 years. Now, it very much depends on with whom you connect. And the reason I say that is your inspiration to do the particular practice is all important. All important. It's what inspires you, moves you, makes sense to you. That's it. And it usually comes through a connection that you form with a particular teacher or teachers. Would you agree with this, Michael?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very helpful.
Because it's the experience of many, many beings that's how it works. It said that the Buddha taught 84,000 different dharmas, and that each one was unique to the particular person that he met and were particularly suited to that person. And, you know, part of the power of the Buddha is how many people became enlightened in his time. And, you know, so who knows what, where we were at that point. But in regard to the complexity, sometimes one of the things that I've been told in different classes I've taken is that really what Buddhism teaches is very simple. And we get it in sitting meditation practice, just simply being present, simply being awake. The complexity comes in because of the complexity of what we believe to be true that we have to work ourselves free of. So you have teachings on the skandhas to free us of the idea that ego exists, teachings on karma and how karma forms and how we got here, how things come to be, and so on and so forth. And there are different practices like Tonglen to dissolve our self-fixation and develop compassion. But each of those is a step on the way. That's what, you know, in the beginning part of the book, when she talked about at each stage, if we grasp onto it and say, this is it, we're stuck. And so there's a constant letting go. Somewhere Trungpa Rinpoche used the analogy of peeling an onion, to being layer after layer. But with Dzogchen, if we could realize it, as I understand it at least, it's all right there. And sometimes we have moments like that.
Thank you.
Looks like it's time, so.
I'm aware that we're past time. Mark, are you coming tomorrow night? Because you asked this question tomorrow?
Yeah, that's fine. That's great.
Okay.
Great. In that case, I will put up the dedication of merit, and we can dedicate the merit generated through our study and practice. And this time I won't mute myself.
And we'll continue the discussion tomorrow.
Okay, so we'll dedicate the merit generated through our practice and study to the benefit of all sentient beings. By this merit may all obtain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom, may the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled, may all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you, John and
Good
Michael.
night, everyone.
So, Michael,
Yes, we'll have to stop recording, but we'll have to decide what to do next week.
don't you think it was necessary to stop there?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot. But good.
Yeah, no, I think it's
All right, so we can take a look and see what we're going to do next week.
yeah, she goes through all these special instructions, you know, from a different text, I forget what it's called, and maybe we could even do a little bit, you know, work our way through that very experientially next week.
What text are you talking about?
It's the one she uses at the end of the book. Starting on page 206, which we're almost at, she talks about a companion text to Liberation of Hearing discovered by Karma Lingpa called Self-Liberation Through Naked Sight, Pointing Out Awareness.
But do we have that text?
Well, she quotes, it's in this chapter, starting on page 206. So
Well, let's take a look at what's left in the book. I've got all my notes, you know, for the whole chapter, and see if we can finish the whole chapter next week.
I think we could, especially, but I say that starting on 206, she quotes different lines from the text to exemplify Dzogchen, and maybe we can just go through it very slowly with, as more of a almost a guided practice session, since that's what I think she does. And we'll see what you think.
Okay.
Right.
So we'll
So
talk.
tomorrow I have a dentist appointment, so I won't be in the meditation in the morning. I'll be getting a crown, unfortunately.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I'll see you when you're ready.
Tomorrow night.
Okay. And then
I'll
we'll
be.
start talking about the chapter for next week.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Good night.
Ciao.